mentioned, I'm Emily Page, and I'm the CEO of Pearl Resourcing. It's a product development agency, and we help people take their idea and get it manufactured. A little bit about me, and this is actually very relevant to what I'm going to teach in this webinar. I'm going to share a little bit about me first. And so firstly, I am someone who just loves learning, and I love understanding how and why. And so I went to USC in Southern California. I studied economics. I got into a master's program, and I was trying to consider, should I go and get a PhD? And I had this amazing turn of events in my life where I failed a qualifying exam to get into the PhD program. And so I had my master's, but I didn't have my PhD. And I thought, what am I supposed to do with my life? And I still want to understand how the world works. And I ended up getting an opportunity to work for, got a job offer from someone in the product development agency or product development field, and as a project manager. And I thought, oh, is this the right thing for me to do? Maybe I'll be missing my calling. And I took the job, and I was so glad that I did, because I got thrown into product development. And with this particular company, they were doing private label product development for frozen foods in every single grocery store chain. They were also doing salads, cheeses, all types of things. So I got tons of experience developing products as well as developing packaging, but I got to be tutored underneath the CEO of the company. And eventually after that, I got married and fell in love with a guy and got divorced. And after that divorce, I had to quit my job that I totally loved, developing products. And I thought, wow, what a terrible situation, a little heartbreak. And it was really, really hard. I'm making a light of it now, but it's so hard. And what was really amazing is that as I was searching for the next thing, I got an opportunity. I met a man who was also from USC. He was 76 years old and selling his packaging product development company. And because I had quit this job and because I was free, I had nothing going on at the middle of this divorce, I was actually able to capture that opportunity. And I took some of my savings. I took his samples and I went to a trade show and I started selling packaging. And I thought, if I get orders, I'm going to really give my skills to this. And I got orders. And so I ended up building this company over the past few years. And what's cool is that we all go through hardships in our lives, and you just never know. A closed door can sometimes lead to the biggest and most wonderful opportunities in your life that actually stretch and grow you and fulfill your deepest needs. My desire to create products, actually, I get to fulfill that on a daily basis when I'm developing things. And I had no idea that this would be a better fit than this econ program that I thought I wanted to get into. So that's a little bit about me. I'm now, you can see I've worked on products that have gotten Sophie Awards in the frozen food category. I was a part of that whole rebrand. I've done products for Kroger in the frozen food section. I've done products for Williams and Sonoma. That Bon Maman advent calendar right there was a bestseller on Amazon, sold out for the past 3 years that we've done it. Jocko White Tea was a product that we developed for a celebrity influencer, and he's a top 10 business podcaster. And we've received acknowledgments from BeverageNet and from Brand Packaging Magazine for best design in the tin category. Williams Sonoma, tons of other products in Costco. So I've accomplished quite a lot. Why does that matter? I'm sharing that with you not to brag about both the failures and successes in my life, but because brand matters, story matters. Life is busy, and the most successful brands effectively tell a story that has feeling behind it. Whether that feeling is fun, whether that feeling is, wow, this is like a premium product, I get to experience something special. This is a value product that's going to help me provide for my family and save on a budget. This story is what people are going to remember and what they feel. And as we're designing products and we're designing packaging, we want to constantly be aware of that deeper story and understand both our customer and make an emotional connection to them so that they can relate. Because that's where multiple purchases come. You can trick someone into buying once, but that's not our goal. Our goal is to build a business and products that are meaningful. So it's important to develop a story and to share it. That's why I wanted to let you know a little bit about me and where I come from. This right here is 2 bottles of water. I literally just recently bought them at a grocery store. And guess how much the bottle on the left-hand side is? It's about 89 cents. And there's tons of private label versions in this exact packaging. And then the one on the right is a Voss bottle. You can buy it in glass or plastic. And do you know how much that one is in the same grocery store? Two real estate placements away. It was like $6. $6. Can you believe it? Why? It's just water, the same amount of volume. The amazing thing is that packaging is what made the difference between the bottle on the left and the bottle on the right. The perceived brand value actually came from the packaging, the structure of the bottle, because one is like super squishy, you can tell it's cheap plastic. The other is a very like rigid, very beautiful, premium feeling, thicker plastic. Then also the branding on it, one's very minimalist, and then the other brand has a little bit more fun, earthy, everyday feeling. So I want you to understand that firstly, we are going to talk about developing great products, but you need to understand that you need to communicate that to people. And when you do that effectively, you're going to be able to take higher margins for the same exact product. So what are the best practices for packaging design for retail success? We want to talk about those fundamental elements. It's important to know that private label sales has been increasing because not only store brands, which is, we originally gave this presentation to ECRM Store Brands trade show. And so we were speaking specifically to retailers, people who are developing products for retail. And these people who, some of you guys are in that category and are watching today. And then there's a lot of other people who are in the manufacturing entrepreneurial space or working for a company and have a slightly different perspective. People who do store brands do private label all day long, and that's their profession. So they have a ton of experience, and it's very interesting to hear their perspective. So a lot of the presentations and examples that we will be using will be store brands, private label store brands. So I don't want any entrepreneur to be isolated or feel that we're not speaking to them. We're looking at these because these are the most recognized, the most studied. We have the most data on these types of private label programs, and we can learn a lot from them. And besides the fact that they're growing, what you need to know is that 8%, there's been a negative 2.3% decline in the discounted products and an 8% growth in premium products. So that means the majority of private label growth is actually happening in the premium category. Those 2 water bottle examples. People are actually looking for something that will deliver value, and they're willing to buy private label products or new brands, explore new brands, if they're able to communicate something that's premium. If it's just a knockoff or a discount, they don't trust it because there has not been the building of a story and a relationship between you and the customer. And so what I want to point out from that statistic is that number one, you want to build awareness of your brand, which is your sales strategy or marketing strategy, but then you need to build trust so that you continue to get those sales, because people are not trusting private label anymore that doesn't have a strong brand story. So let's talk about how we're going to measure our success. It's not just going to be total dollars. It's not going to just be sales velocity, number of units. How are you going to measure customer loyalty? We want to look at it from a perspective of the ultimate goal is building trust with our customer. And if we do that, not only will they want to buy the first time, they will buy the second time, and we'll build a very strong private label program. So the very first principle, there's going to be 6 total, is that you want to create a unique brand story that builds trust. And Me Too products, knockoffs, they're out of style, they're not in vogue. You want to be building something. And so what actually builds a strong brand? Number one, you need to be very intentional. You can't just throw these things together. You shouldn't. You can, but you shouldn't. You want to be intentional about thinking of your customer. You want to be transparent and make the argument that you are providing something that's good for you, that's superior than an alternative branded product. So you need to be sure that it's delicious and worth purchasing. And the way that we do this internally, the way that I approach this is I first want to think about who I'm serving. And it really helps every person. Okay, we are all primal in some ways, where we have the frontal lobe that thinks through words, and the very back of our brain that forms actually when you were first a tiny little baby. The first part of your brain that forms is in the very back, and it thinks in colors and it thinks in feelings. It's very like reactionary. And so we all need to be thinking about people and communicating to like the deepest, fastest way to communicate with them is with visual cues and indicators. And you want to take whatever it is that you know of that customer and build towards that. Like, how can we communicate visually what a great product this is? We want to first think through who that person is and what they're going to want. So first, what we start with is always identifying who our customer avatar is and what their deepest desires are. So if you're going to be building your own brand and your own brand story, you want to literally sit down and brainstorm and write on a piece of paper, customer avatar. And I love giving that person a name. Like, come up with a person's name. Emily, what does Emily as the person, if I was the customer, what is that Emily's deepest desires, goals, and visions when they're coming to shop in your store or shop on your e-commerce? Because you want to solve a problem for them. People buy emotion. And so you want to be able to know what those emotions are that they're feeling on a daily basis. What are their greatest values and needs? Is your customer trying to get a premium experience? Are they a single millennial and they have maybe some discretionary income and they want to have a fun time? So are you going to speak to them and say, we're going to help you have fun? Or are you going to speak to the, a family that's trying to save money and be conservative and provide something that's healthy? If you can write those things out in a brainstorming session with your team, you're going to begin the first step. Then after that, you need to refine it and make it even more clear. So first huge brainstorming session, then you need to refine it so that you actually create a sheet that you're going to use every single time whenever you're making new product decisions or designing new packaging. And that needs to include something like a brand romance, which can be 1 to 3 sentences that describes in fun words what your mission is. Then you want to describe like what your values are. You want to make it as small as possible. Like, hey, we're committed to sustainability. Hey, we're committed to value. That way, whenever you're making decisions, your whole team can make decisions aligned with the values of the brand. And then you want to have pick from those values, call outs, things that best express that. So if value is your number one goal, like we want to be affordable, then you need to find there are different ways of describing that. Rather than just saying value, you could say best value or superior savings. There's different ways that you can communicate fun brand feelings to your customer. And those things will end up on your packaging. And then you're going to want to define what those things need to be visually that will communicate these values and these call outs. So obviously everyone wants to have a logo, because the reason why you do that is because that primal part of your brain is very quick to identify what your brand is and what those feelings are that they feel towards your brand. It's always going to be associated with an image and with colors. So you want to have a great brand design agency that will help to identify the icons and graphics, colors, and logos that will be repeated over and over and over again on every product launch and every website that you end up selling and marketing your products in. And so a good brand guide, like after you've defined these things verbally, your visual artist, your brand identity director needs to have a PDF that shows these colors, fonts, logos, photos, even like the color filters. If you're doing social media, like, is it going to be a cool tone? Is it going to be a warm tone? And even keywords that might possibly pop up repeatedly throughout the romance that you're committing to. You may not like sounding too expensive. And so you make commitments about keywords you're not going to use and keywords that you feel are on brand. And those things can be given to everyone on your team so that everyone can make the same unified decisions and move the brand forward. And then lastly, besides having that PDF, I think it's so important to discuss the planogram. And for anybody who's focusing strictly on retail, you can think of a planogram in multiple ways. Planogram is strictly like the map of a grocery store and where people buy products. So you can imagine that when you first walk into the store, you experience, they create an experience right there at the end, the first moment that you walk in. And when you're checking out, that's a different location in a grocery store. And you can actually plan out where your product should be belonging. If you're in a produce section, if you're in the milk category, you want to really know where you should be placed. And if it's possible to have your product in a different position so that you can design according to where you go on the planogram. If you're an online commerce store, you can do the same thing, just defining whether or not you're going to be selling on Amazon or Shopify and be really clear where the product will be sold. And once you have all that, it's very important to solidify it, have it in a Word document, distribute it to your team. That way everyone stays on course. So this is a good example. Kroger's Simple Truth brand is really great at defining. They have a clear logo and a clear brand, Simple Truth, and their call outs are consistently being served on every single packaging design that they do. And so if you look at, they are going to be organic. They're going to be free from, I love that. Free from what? Free from bad products that you don't want to be giving to your family, natural and fair trade. And so consistently, they are focusing very, very narrowly on what their brand commitments are. And I know a number of mothers who buy Simple Truth because they want to avoid the brand equivalent. They don't want some of the sucralose and bad products that they expect to be in some of the cheaper and even some of the premium branded products. So I think that they've done a really good job. There's also all these Live G free. So gluten-free is the thing these days because a lot of people are developing allergies, millennials especially. are just obsessed with avoiding gluten. And so Aldi identified the fact that that's important and made it so incredibly clear that if you have a gluten intolerance, you can go and find the products there. And there's no missing it because the brand artwork is so well defined. And as a result, people are specifically going to Aldi to buy these products because they know that they're going to be safe. And you're going to get repeated buys as well. So not just one product in the brand line, they're going to buy multiple items. So having looked at those examples, we want to talk about the second thing that you need to do when you're developing product development. When you're doing private label to sell, you want to think about, how can I create this product so that by itself, separated from the entire brand, it will stand alone? And a lot of that comes down to, like, the reason why that's important is because when you've created unique products, people come to your store just to buy that product. If it's delicious and completely addictive, they're going to want to go into the aisle, they're going to want to go find your product, and that's going to create and build brand loyalty. But if you have a brand commitment that's very strong, but your products individually, you have a few misses, you might like lose an entire opportunity for customers to continue to buy your products online or in stores. If they try out one product and it's really terrible, they're not going to come back. So different ways that you can do that is firstly to really believe and stand behind the product. And I love it when stores pick products that they personally, as the buyer, would buy themselves. I think if you're developing something that you don't enjoy or that other people on your team don't enjoy, you're not going to be successfully create something that is going to become addictive like that. Things that really, really work is to find current trends and to explore products like that as well. I think Amazon is a great source to see what's trending. You can find the best sellers in each category to just see what's trending, what are people really liking, what's really popular. Looking in food blogs and food magazines, just setting aside an hour when you're trying to do product development to just research in your category what is currently trending, and go and try it. And trying it yourself will help you to find something that you're really, really passionate about and be able to write the romance and make the choices about your brand that will really help it stand out. Besides, we'll talk more about picking trends and stuff like that in a little bit later down the line. But once you've defined what your brand is and once you've defined what the product needs to be, you need to really communicate it to customers. And sales, what's so weird is a lot of products that you are currently buying in grocery stores, whether it be chocolate or tea. Literally, there's a charcoal facial cleanser that I have from Dollar Tree, and it's the same one that's selling for a lot more in Target. So sometimes the same products can be sold. It's just the it's different prices, but the packaging is actually what communicates the value. There's two different ways that we need to look at packaging, and most people think of the first one, which is visual. It's the external structure, the printing, the location of the printing of your packaging. But there's also the structure, the physical thing that the printing, the label is put on. So that could be the blank label, it could be the bottle, it could be the jar, it could be the box, the actual material. You need to think through both of those things when you're developing your products. So let's talk first about visual, because that's what most people are thinking of when we talk about product development and packaging. The first thing you want to think through is color. And there is something about complements and contrasts. And if you want to put on a shelf or on a website something that will grab attention, you want to be able to have both complement and contrasting colors. If you're talking to your web designer, the way that you execute this is you come to the color wheel and you pick the colors on the opposite end. And this is an example of a very primary color wheel and what it would look like if you were to pick complements to match them into different boxes or packaging to cause the eye to be attracted to that exact space. But you can refine this to your own brand. So this is an example. I like super jewel tone, bright colors. Here's an example of our palette. And then here's how you would apply it in color contrast. And just as a person's walking by, we're attracted to that primal thing like, oh, there's berries over there, or oh, there's fruit. This is what causes someone to grab their attention subliminally when they're walking in a grocery store. And really strong examples of how you can use color besides just the color contrast part is actually color coding and associating colors with things that are within your brand story. So you can pick something like, with Lucerne Dairy and Safe for Safeway, they have consistently all of their dairy products are color coded so that fat-free products are all blue, the full fat are all red. And then they're able to also apply the similar waves of color. You can see right there, the cow They also have, I don't know how easy it is for y'all to see, but there's like an almond milk over there in the far right corner. And you can see that there's a tree because they're telling their story in a very consistent way with both color and imagery. And it tells the customer, hey, this is a product that you can buy and you can trust. You already know exactly what you're getting. The other thing when you're designing visually is that you want to plan for merchandising. So how will this product be sold? If it's going to be on a website, these colors need to actually play off of the colors of the website, because technically your website, the customer is looking directly at it. This is the shelf. This is the theoretical shelf where they're going to be browsing your product. And so you need to create the colors that are going to cause it to pop out. If you're selling this on Amazon, for example, it's mostly white, a white page. So will the colors and imagery, the shapes and sizes be large enough that it would grab and draw the eye to it? If you're going to be planning for in store, you want to be thinking about what it would look like on the shelf. I have told many people who are developing their brand new products when I do consulting, and I tell them, go print off the artwork, go put it on the shelf right next to the other products that you'll be selling things through, because you need to see when you're walking through, would it grab attention? So literally, because I am a packaging nerd, I do this on a regular basis. This photo is obviously hard for you to see the specific products that are in there. But if you zoom in really quick, like tell me like which products actually stand out to you. I don't know if there's a way that I could actually see. Oh, there's people raising their hands in the chat. I don't know which ones stand out to you, but let's see the drawing right here. I think I can draw on this. You know, for me, this one right here really, really stands out. Like these bright colors and the color contrast right here, that one, these colors are not pretty good. Let's try yellow. For me, that stands out. That stands out. The white stands out for me. I'd be curious, I wish there was a way that I could have you guys draw on this too, but you can do this on a regular basis. I walk in the store in a category where I'm working, I take photos of the entire grocery store and the shelf, and I'll text it to a friend and say, like, without zooming in on the photos, what stands out to you? And you'll notice that a lot of bold colors will do that. So will a lot of white, and so will oftentimes framing, where you can actually frame a product. I'll show this here. You know, this is an example of product photography. Especially in consumer goods, being able to see the actual product that you're going to be consuming is very, very helpful, especially on snacks. And so you can see that these products have been framed right here, meaning that they put a color bar around the product, and it almost creates like a dart, or you're instantly focused, your eye feels like focusing on that specific thing. That's an awesome strategy. You can see that up here with the lovely organic chews, caramel chews. And then this naturally, this white, the reason why Justin's packaging, even though it's not very colorful, is actually really effective is because the white that they use creates a natural frame for the product that they're trying to show off, and it actually does grab attention. It's very important to make sure that product photography that you use is beautiful, accurate for the thing inside. You know, that's one of the things that we'll talk about later in terms of errors that does not work and that I've seen really, really hurt brands, is not using the correct photos. Another great example of use of color and of photography is, I just think Target Simply Balanced brands has really been effective. You can see that the teal color creates actually a frame around the product. The product photography, which has been a little bit doctored, but it looks really accurate to what you're going to get when you peel open the bag. And they use a lot of the juicy fruits. So the contrast of colors are actually playing in the little logos that are on top of the product that they're selling right there. So you can go into a Target near you and go take a look and study it. They apply it across these little snacks, popcorns. You can see these crackers over here, and then also the olive oil brand, where color really, it makes it stand out against the brand equivalents. And the other thing that I would say with visual design is that you really need to reduce the number of call outs. I've seen so many entrepreneurs, online e-commerce brands, and they just want to tell you the 20 million things that this product does. I was working on a frozen vegetable program, and the number of call outs, they're like, a great source of vitamin C, a great source of 1,000 different things. And I don't think that the average mother or father who is buying that product necessarily needs to know 20 different vitamins that it's a great source of. They maybe want one vitamin that's very good for them. But the other things that they really are wanting from that product is easy. Your kids are going to love it. Like fast, fast but healthy. So refining call outs so that way it's actually easy to read for your customers, I think a good idea. Whole Foods brand, the reason why I think that what they do really well is that they focus on just one. Like you can look at, there's vitamin C and organic. This chicken is actually, it looks like there's a ton of stuff on there, but most of it's just required legally. They have to have all this information, but they only have these 3 call outs right here in the clear banner in red. And so every time you pick up a 365 branded product, you know where to look to read what those call outs are, and they've reduced them to 3. So I would recommend that. And it's the same with Rayleigh's Purely Made and Nob Hill, is that they are such a simple brand. It's just red. It's just a red logo and then font consistencies and then a few call outs. And so it makes it very, very easy to read that label because it's very clean. So after you've picked your visual design, you need to think through the structure, right? So what structure should I put my product in? What packaging structure? And you can pick any type of material. There's glass, there's tin, there's boxes, plastic pouches, printed flexible film. So you want to identify like what type of material that you're going to use and what the dimensions and shape are. And the way you determine that is everything to do with the use of the product. So if you want to be very analytical about it, you want to think through like liquids, obviously dry foods and frozen foods require certain packaging to keep the product safe and to keep the shelf life long. If you're going to be selling this product to Costco eventually, if you're going to be selling it to club stores, you need to be sure that you have a family-sized option, and that will affect the dimensions of the serving sizes of the product, the shelf life. If a person's going to be taking it from the store home, are you creating enough insulation inside of that box that the product will be able to last all the way over? Or if it's going to be sent via Amazon and through the mail, is it a delicate product just like cookies? And if they're like macaroon cookies, we did a program for them. Is the clamshell going to hold the product in place? And we had to do a custom mold to be able to create enough space and security for those macaroons to keep them into place. And we did that same thing for like ceramic mugs. If we knew that we were going to sell it online, you have to think through the courier delivery system, because that affects the packaging that you're going to be using. And even the dimensions of the boxes. Sometimes something else that you should think through is if you're selling products online like Amazon, there's certain fees for different box sizes that you can go look up online anytime on Seller Central. You can look up what are the shipping fees and box sizes for Seller Central. And so if you design a product that fits specifically within those boxes, you can get a lower cost for your customers for shipping. So you want to think about that stuff at the very beginning. And also if it's reusable. It's more expensive, for example, on a stand-up pouch. I put everything away for you guys, so I don't have anything out. But a resealable pouch, if a person's going to be reusing it, that might be super important for your product if you're selling it to families or in larger sizes. So the use is how you determine the material that you're going to use and the dimensions and size. And you should just be a scientist and go and figure out, what else to make it easy. You go either into the category where you're trying to break in, like, okay, I'm going to launch a new product, and see the size and dimensions that other people are using, because usually there's a reason why they're doing it that way. You also want to talk to the person who's going to be manufacturing it, the co-packer. They have specific capabilities. And so you can imagine with flexible packaging, so that's anything that you can kind of tear, and it's like chip bags, there are certain tooling. There's machines that are actually processing the chips and putting them into bags. And there's tooling sizes. So if you're like, I want to have a huge bag, I'm going to create something super, super small, you have to figure that out. So a stand-up pouch that we were recently working on for a tea company, they wanted a very small footprint, and like, how small can we make this pouch? And so we had to call the co-packer, the manufacturer of the printed film, to say, hey, how small can you make it? And they said 4 inches. Then we had to call the co-packer to make sure that what can you fill 4 inches? And so the good news is that both the co-packer and the manufacturer could both handle that size. But had the co-packer said, no, we can't do 4, it needs to be at least 5 for us to automate this, it would have changed our options for packaging. So you want to talk to both the packaging manufacturer and the co-packer to determine things like size. And also, it's really just great to build a relationship with your vendors, your packaging manufacturers, your packaging designers. I've seen people send in requests for quotes and kind of be a little rude about it, as though we would be so lucky to get their business. And the truth is, people are so busy, and no one knows if you're actually going to place an order with them. And they're spending time on your project, getting you costs and getting you information for free, and you may not order it. You might be price comparing. And so I think it's a great idea to develop a relationship with your co-packer and with your packaging supplier as though they're a real person and that they've got, mouths to feed too. And so if you make a good relationship with them, you can oftentimes get that free information that will help you to better design affordable products or premium products, that kind of thing. And one other thing to consider is that when you are doing custom stuff, there's always going to be things like, custom mold fees, and it's going to have a higher quantity that you have to order, and therefore a longer lead time and higher costs. And unless you're Coca-Cola, you're going to be in the back of the line if your product is too different from what your current co-packer or your current packaging manufacturer has ever done. So if you want to make it fast and speedy, you should not do custom. You should do something that's kind of within the wheelhouse of what's already being done, although that's not as innovative. So I'm not saying there's never a place for it, but you just want to be strategic and know that there's a consequence or a cost to being super creative. And you just want to be ready for your whole team to know what those costs are before you move that direction. When you are sending in a request for quote to your co-packer or to your packaging manufacturer, what you want to do is you want to give them all of this information. I think some of you guys are like, oh, this is my industry, I already know this. But for some of you who are entrepreneurs and newer to it, you want to tell them what your serving size for your product that would go inside of, you need the volume of the product that goes inside of the packaging. You want to tell them the quantities that you're going to be ordering. And you want to ask them for multiple tiers, because you might be eventually doing high volume, but you might do your first run that's really small. And if you're hoping to get costs at that high volume, but you're really going to only be ordering small, you should let them know, so that they have an opportunity to try to win your business and figure out the best way to protect themselves in terms of the cost that they'll incur making your product. You want to tell them things like the master case count, how many units are going to go in the corrugate box that the product will be shipped eventually in. You want to describe the use of the product so that they can give you advice, like, is the plastic, is the product very sensitive to smells? Does it need to have a barrier? Is the product going in the frozen food section so that it needs to be water impermeable and have aqueous coating? So you want to define that stuff in your email request, and any other things that are reflected, like brand colors, if that is going to be affected by if you want like glass that's not amber or clear or blue, you want to describe those things, and any other brand commitments. If it must be recyclable, if you guys are going to be not using plastic, or make sure those things are clear so that you can get the best answers from your suppliers. And I really believe people should test stuff. So a lot of graphic design companies design in a vacuum. So they just design it on a computer. And that's, I think, why I try to be unique in that way. We as a company try to be unique in that way, is where we want to print the product, put it on a shelf, make sure that it's going to actually stand out and that the colors are really, really working well. So you can do that too by making 3D mock-ups. You can, we do printed samples for people. It's expensive. So it's true that it is expensive to buy those things, but it will help you sell. If you're going to go and make a website, or if you're going to go to meet with like your retail buyer, you want to impress them. You need to look professional and pulled together, and you need to take the time to be diligent to understand what your product will look like one day. So I recommend making mock-ups. I also think that you should, I mentioned putting it on the shelf, testing it in the store environment. So if it's a frozen food, make sure you make a sample, put it in the frozen section, make sure that it's still going to look good there. Because sometimes like the lighting in the freezer section can be really bad. It can affect the way your packaging artwork looks. Test it out if you're going to be sending it via Amazon. Put it in a box, mail it to someone, drop it off the first floor. Make sure that the product is going to be able to be safe the way it will actually be packed. With recyclability, so many people want to do compostable, but a lot of that stuff is not actually truly compostable unless it's sent to an industrial compost site. And there's only like 4 in the whole United States that actually can compost. So you want to do some tests and really understand what your recyclability would be, or compostability. And also test for everyday use. Like if you're doing popcorn in a new type of bag, make sure that you spend a lot of time testing the way the customer would actually possibly enjoy it, in case it comes up with new ideas before you actually launch your product. Y'all know the different materials that are out there, rigid giftable boxes, folding carton, corrugate, paper or fabric bags. I just put that out there because some people are still learning different terminology for packaging. And one of the other ways that different packaging sizes can actually influence your products is if you're doing different serving sizes. And I completely love this concept because you might be the master at selling, peanut butter filled pretzels, but you're currently selling them in a 12-ounce bag that's for everyday use, and you're currently sitting in the snack aisle. But what if you put your peanut butter in a tub, or you made peanut butter pretzel peanut butter spread and you put it in a tub? And that's a different type of a structural jar. It's a different packaging. You could do that in like larger sizes or smaller sizes, so it could be grab and go for kids. And then you could even do smaller little snack sizes, that like a big bag with little tiny snacks. And if you do like a very long one that was a peanut butter filled pretzel, by thinking through different sizes and shapes of packaging, structural packaging, you can even change the way your brand sells. And my favorite example is Justin's Peanut Butter. They had this genius idea of putting packaging in these little like to-go pouches. And because they did that, they changed, firstly, the peanut butter game. Like, peanut butter was a very established commodity-based business, and people were suddenly starting to do almonds and cashew butter in glass jars, making it very premium. When Justin's came on the scene and said, no, you know what, the average person, either athletes or moms or dads, people who are making lunches, are gonna want to have peanut butter. It's so sticky. So they put it in this little pouch, and suddenly people could take that with them without having to like put it into their own little Tupperware. And it changed the game for them. It changed their sales velocity. They suddenly had multiple SKU footprints on the front. So there's jars, now there's little pouches, and they captured retail space on the shelf from other established peanut butter companies by just changing the structure. And then on top of that, the little tiny thing is able to go at the checkout stand. I was at Starbucks the other day buying some coffee, and people were buying bagels, and right in front was a Justin's Peanut Butter little pouches at the checkout. Can you imagine how much they're selling just because they use that structure? How many open doors came into their life just because they were willing to look at the structure differently outside their category? Now, it took risk, it took an expense. It's not right for everybody to go outside your category, but it can really help you win and change the game if you start thinking through how customers are using your product and are willing to take some risks like that. A great other example of how structural packaging is being used on a daily basis to tell brand story is Trader Joe's salad aisle, which is my favorite aisle at Trader Joe's because I don't like to make my lunch. I like to just buy it. They use different structural packaging to communicate the differences of the salads and how they're supposed to be used. And their most premium ones have this rectangle shape, and they're more expensive, and the square ones are the traditional sizes. So they're able to charge a different cost just by changing the box that it's going in. So it's something to learn from. The one other thing to think through is that the examples can't be too different. If you look at the top, these are all oils. They're all car oils. And if you suddenly do a car oil in this little, in the second row in like a squeeze tube, a customer not familiar with your product is going to walk right by, and they're not going to realize that you belong in that category. So you want to think that part through, is make sure that, am I going to deviate too much so that I'll lose being noticed and seen, especially if you're testing it out in a grocery store, but even on a website or on Amazon. And then another example of this is actually a project that I did, and us as a company, we usually work with the manufacturers. So actually Kroger does not know that we did these little cups, and the idea originally came from the manufacturer of the product, and they said, oh my gosh, I wish we could make little tiny cups to make our product. And we said, we can do that for you. So we created these little bakeable, recyclable, ovenable little quiche cups, and this became a product that they now sell at Kroger, and it's like a bestseller. It just is like selling like crazy. So when you sometimes innovate, it can actually, this was not even a thing being sold in there. They did not have any quiche cups yet. They were currently selling it at Starbucks. They had just been developing those little, the little ones. And there was a lot of like Jimmy Dean sandwiches, but not luxury to go omelet bites. And so by adding this in the packaging, it suddenly it changed the category and became a bestseller. Okay, so I talked a little bit about this before. Principle number 5, got to take a breath because I've been talking fast. I hope you all are keeping up. And don't forget to add any questions. If you have any questions so far about anything that's come up that I have not said anything, I've not answered because I'm going so fast, please use the Q&A section and you can type in a question and just submit it. Okay, so So number 5, okay, so plan for strategic merchandising. So you want to think about where you're going to be placing the product that you're going to be selling. And I mentioned if you change the size of the product, you might be able to sell your shampoo in the travel section or in the checkout aisle. When you stop and think through from a bird's eye view, where in the store products are being purchased and what those things look like and how someone might be enjoying the product once they take it home. They're shopping in the to-go section because they need it to be a certain size. So the customer's use is what's driving this all. When you take a moment to think that through, it really can empower you to expand and make powerful decisions about your brand. The same can be said for online. If you're going to be selling products on Amazon or you're going to be selling them on Shopify, there's different categories actually. So people might be drinking, there's an iced tea section. There's, you could sell tea products in like a travel and go category. If you can strategically either design the packaging or communicate the brand story in a way that you belong in multiple places. And the other thing I should say is that if you can be found in multiple places, a person is shopping on a grocery store, on a website, they're just so busy. They don't have time to sit and stare at your product the same way that you lovingly do as a brand owner. And so you want to be sure that you are seen in multiple places and give someone, it's a way to evangelize your brand. It's free marketing. The more places you can be put in a store, the more places that you can be put on a website, the more categories that you can qualify for, the better and more likely it is that your product is going to be seen. This is a photo of me in a grocery store taking a photo because that's what I do. This is in Whole Foods here. Actually, this is in San Diego. And I loved it because it's a great example of what a lot of retailers do. It's called color blocking. It's when you take colors of products and you match them together to kind of create that color contrast complement thing. It works so powerfully to drive sales that that's what they do at end caps, which are the very end of a grocery store aisle. So Whole Foods here took 2 different brands that are not actually related. They're not partners. And they partnered them together because when you eat chips, what do you often do? You drink soda. These are healthy chips made out of chickpeas and a soda that has no sugar in it. And so it makes it like a fun shopping experience and it grabs your eye. The moment you walked in that grocery store, it's the first thing that you saw. So I was color blocking that day too. I had a red sweater on and I looked like I belonged there. So you want to think that through with your brand and then think about how your product might be placed with other products that are partner complementary products. Toothbrush, toothpaste, shampoo, conditioner. Maybe it's shampoo and like face mask. Things that you might be using at the same time that you would want to use together. Either you want to, if you own a grocery store and a brand, you're developing brands, you're going to want to design even products that could be matched together. Because a lot of times, you're designing within a narrow scope and you're like, okay, I'm just working on soaps today. I'm just working on soaps. But could you step back and think through designing multiple products under this private label brand you're building that could already be thinking about how you're going to be displaying and merchandising it in stores? So a good example of, let me see. Oh, just strategic merchandising here is Target's Archer Farms snack brand. You could like the first thing I'll point out is that this is the snack aisle on the left-hand side of the store. And you can see that that's the traditional place you'd go to grab snacks. Then the next photo, they actually built an end cap where you can find it before you go in there. So they made a plan to have a second platform for this product. And then again, you'd find it at checkout where if you squint in, you can see the little grab and go bags of the snack program that they developed. And the colors match the ones that are over there. So they built a brand already expecting that they were going to serve this in other places. And the thought that just came to my mind is like, they probably even have this in their sports section, because why not put snacks like this that are healthy next to the balls and basketballs and bikes, because people who are running around on the trail would want trail mix. The other thing that you should note, which if you're a brand developer, we talk about printed packaging, and this is like a whole topic by itself. But if you're trying to launch fast, using stock products can be really powerful because you can not have to meet minimums and you cannot have that much money stored up in inventory in your packaging. And Archer Farms is doing this right here. If you look at the left photo, you can see at the top, there are silver bags with clear front facing windows. Those are not custom bags. They're actually custom labels on the front. So all they did, these are probably lower volume products where it was more cost effective in terms of inventory to just print the label on the front. And so the co-packer is putting a label on the front and the back, and they're still creating a great brand presence and feeling. They're using the traditional forest green. And if you zoom in, you can see the other colors that are applied to the brand, to the flavors. But the other products that you see on the right of that actually are on custom printed bags. This means that these are higher volume products, and it was okay and affordable for them to print these custom bags and be able to make a commitment to the brand story. And then you can see that again with even the grab and go bags and the little snack bags that are below it, which are kind of broader and wider, the like blue and yellow and purple. Those are grab and go bags that have little tiny mini snack packets inside. And so these are cool examples to see of how people have bought packaging to be consistent with their brand colors and the placement merchandising on the shelf. Okay, so the other thing, and the sixth and last thing that you really need to do in order to be able to design private label packaging to sell in retail is you want to think through these partnerships with your co-packers and with your vendors, because the more successful your partnership is with either your vendor or your co-packer, the better your products are going to be. And everything is relationships when it comes to sales. So it's not just one direction, like, oh, I'm only selling to my retailer, or, oh, I'm a retailer and I'm only selling to my customer. You're selling all day long, everywhere that you go, whether it's convincing your kids to put on their socks before they go to school, whether it's convincing your spouse like to show up to this work event that they don't want to go to, whether it's convincing your vendor to take a chance on you and do shorter runs when they might be losing money doing that for you. It's helping you out, but is it helping them? That relationship where there's trust is so important, and it will get you so much farther. And that's true of any entrepreneur listening on this. You want to build a relationship and be a likable person with your co-packer and with your private label, with your packaging designer. And it sounds so weird for me to say that. Some of you might be like, Emily, this is dumb for you to mention it, but there's power in relationship, and there's power in being a likable, good person towards people. And I think that will actually help you to get the best out of developing your product and help you to sell the most. So I want to be sure I said that. The things that you can get out of your co-packer if you do build a relationship with them. Number one, they have so much experience. If you're manufacturing vitamins and you talk to the vitamin co-packer, they know what's currently trending because they're taking POs from the people who are successful. And they can tell you which ingredients are going to be the most successful currently. And they may not be the most innovative. Most co-packers are very focused on, manufacturing products, and they will not usually know what's going to be around the bend, but they know what's currently selling. So talk to them, ask them what's going on, ask them what the trends are, ask them what they're seeing is coming down the pipeline. And I had a great conversation with NorCal Beverage the other day, and they were telling me like, whoa, this ingredient is really, really popular and trending. And I learned something so that if I wanted to innovate new flavors, I could rely on them for some intel. With your co-packer, people will really like you if you manufacture within their capabilities, meaning especially if you're going to go small volumes. So make them like you by picking something that they're already capable and comfortable running. Otherwise, you're going to get a price inflated so that they can make sure they don't risk anything. If they're like, oh, I don't know if I can manufacture that, if that would be really hard, they have to protect themselves. And so they're going to give you a higher cost. If you manufacture within their wheelhouse, it's great. If you're going to ask for something custom, they're going to want you to give high volumes. They're going to want to make you financially commit for them teaching their staff and learning a whole new process. So just keep that in mind as you're talking to them and encouraging them to help you. And be aware, this is specifically speaking to retailers, people who are buyers of private and developing private label programs. Just be aware that when you're asking your co-packer or your manufacturer to buy packaging for you, you're like, oh, we're launching this new product line, and then you cancel it within a few months. You're not canceling to be a jerk. It's not selling. That's fine. But you got to be aware that the co-packer is now on the line for that large quantity, and they might have given you a price based on them buying like large volumes of packaging. And so it's really important to be upfront with them. Hey, this is a test. Hey, this is what we're thinking. Because we're always so price conscious. We want to encourage them to like give us the best price, but just be aware that if we screw them over and we make our manufacturer get stuck with packaging that they just literally have to throw away, you hurt a relationship and you hurt trust, and it's making them less likely to give you good pricing in the future. They've got to like protect themselves. So just be aware of those packaging costs your manufacturer is incurring, and either you can incur it yourself or you just give them transparent information so they can plan accordingly. I would say be aware and grateful of a co-packer or a vendor's efforts to get you samples, because I've done this many times where we sent samples and the customer didn't even open it. And, you know, it was a frozen food product and it went bad just sitting there. And we sent them tracking and they, of course, were busy. Everyone is so busy. And then they were upset at us for not having sent the samples, and upset, that they were not doing well on their deadline or things like that. So acknowledging receipt of the samples that you get, writing a thank you note, I do this all the time. Even in a professional environment, people like to have fun, so I take a photo of myself with the samples and I send it via text message to the buyer. And it's like, is that really necessary, Emily? Do you need to do that to your like factory that's bidding out on your capsules that you're trying to manufacture? No, but they're going to think of me before anyone else who's a small time retail person, because I'm fun and I'm appreciating what they're doing for me. So I think you can get a lot out of your relationships, not just to manipulate, but to actually make your own life better by acknowledging the receipts, being respectful of, especially overnight. Some buyers will just be like, I want it overnighted. It's like $100 to $200 every time you overnight samples, plus the work to make them, and they don't even say thank you. So just be thankful, even if you don't pick that buyer or that factory. If you don't pick that factory to work with, just build a relationship with them anyway. Don't burn a bridge. And then communication of expectations is just really, really key. In terms of risks to avoid, I think inaccurate photos, doctored ones that just don't look real, I think is a turnoff. And also you want to talk to your manufacturer to really get a sample of what that product is. I've done a ton of frozen food. The frozen food can look so different than the picture on the box. So make sure that you've talked to your packaging, to your product developer and your packaging artwork creator, so that way we're getting some accuracy here and make your co-packer make a commitment to what it is that they can ensure and deliver when it comes to the physical product. Like, they're going to be scared to promise too much because there's naturally things break when they're being manufactured, like cookies and chips, but you guys want to be on the same page on that, at least talk about it. Off color, unfriendly colors, yellows and greens. So do a print press check, pick Pantone colors, so that way everyone's committed to what fabulous colors you're going to be using for your product that are going to be yummy. Don't use just cheap materials just to save a buck, because I've seen especially in the frozen food category and in salads, I've seen super cheap materials that break down before the person has even brought it home, and there's no insulation, or the color is being worn off. The boxes are melting in a person's hands so that they're coming out. A person will never want to go back and buy that cheap experience. So be careful about that and test. That's how you ensure that it's not too cheap. And you ask questions of your manufacturer, because that's a way that people think they can save money. If they give you a price of, like, let's say it's $3 and you're buying it, and then they literally don't have enough money to cover what they expected, they might just reduce the cost in packaging. It's usually what people will choose, and then you'll end up being hurt in the long run. So be sure you talk that stuff out and test it. Shelf life requirements, you just want to be sure that you know what packaging can do for you, and that most manufacturers already know the shelf life you can expect, but you want to be able to do tests on anything that's unique or innovative, especially with new packaging. So you have to make timing for that, for the shelf life tests. Innovative packaging. I love innovative packaging. I love it. It just takes a lot of time. So make sure that especially if you're in a big retail, you're working for a retailer, you want to make sure that your team has buy-in, that they're going to be willing to pay those costs and take the time and really, really plan and test. So I love it. Just be sure that you make plans in your timing. And then inefficiencies, just don't go outside the norm if you want it to be fast and if it's a short run. And then if you do want to go outside the norm, make sure you're committed to larger volumes. A few other challenges to overcome. Again, I'm not seeing any questions. If you guys have any questions, please be sure to pop it up either in the chat or the Q&A. So the other challenges to overcome is just like, hey, import tariffs, 25% tariffs coming on any Chinese imported products will totally affect your costs. If you built your whole business around exported packaging or imported packaging, your costs are going to go up. And so maybe you're going to want to find something local. So it's important to plan to have a domestic and international packaging source. That's really going to hook you up in the long run. And also there's always lead times. There's always, what is it called? Strikes. People have strikes all the time. So it's a good idea to plan to stock products in advance and to just make a plan and think through, okay, what's the worst case scenario? What would I do in case something doesn't work out here? And so sometimes buying more of a product in the United States, especially when it comes to packaging, you can get the same cost as you would get internationally on smaller runs. So you have to talk through with your team how you're going to handle that. But this is a challenge to be considered. Creating new molds, the lead times on that are super long and they're crazy expensive. Sometimes you can buy a mold internationally and it's a lot cheaper. So, for some glass or plastic, it can be as cheap as $5,000 to $10,000 in Asia. But in the United States, for like a large bottling company, it can be hundreds of thousands of dollars because they buy, multiple molds and they have to set it up in their whole machinery. So you want to ask the costs and kind of make decisions about that because you have to amortize it across the per unit cost of your packaging when you're building your pricing model. I talked about that one. Sustainability is probably the last of the issues that I think really needs to be overcome with regards to packaging. There's a reason why we use plastic, because plastic is the best at protecting products. It keeps it from going bad, so it lasts longer for the customer, giving them the best value for their product. It keeps things safe, from water, permeability of oils and scents. That's why we're using it. It's not because people and it's cheap. It's so cheap. Unrecycled plastic is cheaper than recycled plastics because here's the reason why this is an issue is because the user has to clean the plastic, remove any labels, remove the dirt, and not put anything else besides plastic in the recycling bin. And how many of us know to do that and actually execute it? It's a user issue that most recycling companies cannot take the plastics from the regular consumer bins and actually use them. And China used to be the company or the country that was taking all of our recycled plastics and sorting through it because of cheap labor. And they now have stopped doing that. So who is going to sort through that plastic because we as consumers do not do it? So it's a challenge because it's very hard on the person who's selling products. They have to pay a lot more money to be able to be socially responsible and economic or eco-friendly, which isn't saying it's not our responsibility as manufacturers, but it's something to think about that we have not yet really figured out. Glass and tin are very easy to recycle. So if you want to focus on recyclability, there's that. Paper products with waxes are compostable, like truly compostable. Put it in your backyard and there you go. But anything that says that it is industrially compostable, so a lot of these plastics, like faux plastics, if you put them in your backyard for 3 years, they will not compost it or change in any shape or form. They actually have to be sent to a special facility. And if anyone takes those fake plastics or compostable plastics, puts them in a regular recycling bin, and they look almost identical, so it's very likely that would happen, it can actually ruin truly recyclable PET, like when they're melting it together, because it's gonna taint the plastic. So there's really not a good, I would argue that there's not really a good compostable plastic out there. So we don't have good answers for that. True PET is recyclable, so that's another thing that you can request from your co-packers. But if a plastic has metallized film in it, different layers of plastic, it's not going to be recyclable, even if you put it in the bin, like I sometimes do. So we don't have a good answer for that, but it's something that we should be working on as product developers, and those are challenges to overcome. Just to summarize what we just discussed, the first thing when it comes to building a brand that will sell, you need to work on being intentional and building trust, and that will increase your sales, because the more transparent you are about your commitments to your product and to your brand, it's going to build the loyalty. And the other pieces, the actual sales and the marketing, those are all things that you have to practice and you have to keep working on But if you don't have a great product and you aren't designing it from the very start that way, you'll be a one and done, or you're not going to go anywhere. So these are the 6 things that I think make a difference. Creating a unique brand story that builds trust. So describing that visually, describing that verbally, and being clear and consistent with those ways you're communicating your brand. Number 2, creating a product that can stand alone. So make sure it's delicious and enjoyable and that you would use it. Would you use it? Would you consider that addicting and something that you'd be happy to give to your mom and father? And if you would, then that's a great sign that the product you're developing can stand alone. And number 3, to design the visual packaging that sells the product. Make sure that the exterior of it is going to communicate all that work that you put into designing this product, and that it's beautiful and eye-catching. Number 4, picking the packaging structure that's going to keep the product safe and that's going to be consistent with the use of what that product is. And number 5, planning for strategic merchandising. So plan multiple places that you're going to put that product, define what that sales strategy is, design the structure or the visual packaging to communicate why it belongs in that category, why you're selling it on Amazon, why you're selling it on Shopify. And then lastly, number 6, to build your vendor and buyer relationships. Make sure that the relationship, the supply chain is about relationships. And the better your ability to communicate and connect with people is going to mean that your business is going to move more smoothly. So these are the things that will help you to design private label packaging to sell more. I would love to know more about what your questions are. So this is the Q&A. If you have any questions, you can add it either in the chat or the Q&A section, and we will answer those. I did get a few of them emailed back to me because I sent out an email last night, and so I don't know if any of you guys saw that. Let's see right here. Okay. One of these questions is, okay, so what's the difference when you're designing for an online commerce versus in-store? So the first thing that's very, very different is when a product is designed for in-store sales, it's usually mass produced and it's put on a pallet, which is a big cube, and then it's wrapped and it's put on a truck. It's very carefully put onto a truck. The most amount of jostling is going to happen on the truck between the factory and the grocery store. After it's taken off, they're like palletized, take it, put in the back, break down the pallet. Then a person is actually putting each box onto the shelf. So there's a little bit of jostling, but for the most part, the product is actually put in a big like wrapped thing. And so products are less likely to break. If you're going online and you're selling, for example, on Amazon or with any co-packer, products are being picked and thrown into a bin and put on a conveyor belt that drop as much as 3 to 6 feet. Every once in a while, it's just dropping and dropping and dropping. And then it's thrown into a box with a loosely filled bag, taped, given to your courier, and he's running it into a truck. That truck is going onto an airplane. That airplane is going to another truck. The person's running away from your dog and trying to put it on a doorstep. So when you're designing for online, you need to consider keeping it safe. Number 1 thing you got to do is test it. Like, you need to test it. You need to create internal, what is it called? Space between the exterior box and whatever bag or thing is inside of it, with either creating air. You can use air inside of your box to protect the product, or you can create plastic inserts. We have some great examples on my website of a mug that we did, an insert that keeps the product safe. Our Bon Maman advent calendar, we created inserts that actually had finger holes that would pull the jar out, but it was so tightly vacuumed that you could not remove the product through shaking. So those are the things you need to think about when you're designing for online commerce versus in stores. I think the one other piece is that in stores, people are walking and viewing your product peripherally from the periphery. So they're not going to stare face on to your product. So you need to design something that's going to capture their eye. And that's why color and big shapes are really important in framing. If you're designing for the internet, you can tell the story and use the website to tell the packaging. So I think that you're able to get away with a lot more. You can use more minimalism. You can use the website to truly tell the story. And so you can use a lot more pictures. Pictures work on packaging that are sold online, but not so well in stores. In stores, you want to be more bulky and chunky. Those are some other things that are a little bit different. Let's see. This one, for the new USDA National Bioengineered Foods Disclosure Standard, any advice on which disclosure options to design into packaging for bioengineered ingredients, disclosures, text on the back, symbols, and digital QR codes? This is a heavy-hitting question. I'm not a food scientist, but I can send you an email with a person who can specifically answer what those rules are. And really, the thing about that is it's very specific to your unique product. I can tell you what the nutritional panel needs to be, so I can send you examples of what the new nutritional panel is, and ingredient disclosures. Yeah, the thing is, it would have to be per product. So what I can do is I've got your email, and I'll send you an email with introducing you to someone. I would get a food scientist to look at your specific product and ingredients and tell you which things need to be disclosed, because the rules have changed so weirdly. Like, for example, natural sugars don't have to be called out, but I believe honey does, or something like that. I listened to like an hour-long presentation on it, and it will make your mind go numb. So let me just send you an email, Mike, and then that way you can specifically send your nutritional panel to them, and they can advise you on your specific product. But for anybody else, I would just say, if you have questions about the back panel, you should talk to a food scientist. Or you can talk to your co-packer, because if your co-packer is in that space, they probably have a lot of insights and intuitions to at least nudge you in one direction or the other. Let's see, what's the other one? There's one other question. Where did it go? There we go. How do you figure out if your label is too busy? So if you're going to be selling in retail, the number one way you figure that out is by putting it on a shelf and looking at it. And if you should be able to tell, from there doesn't need to be a lot of information on the very front of the label. You should make the back of the label have the most information. The front of it needs to visually grab attention. That's the most important thing for the front label. So if you're asking yourself if it's too busy, it probably is. And you should either get a branding packaging designer to take a look at it, someone who's experienced in print, who can really speak to, just by looking at it, whether or not the font size is large enough, whether or not it's too cluttered. And secondly, print out an example and take your team into a store and like walk the aisles. Does it stand out? If there's a lot of information on it, it will blur vision, and you want to have just big, chunky, bright, bold designs, and that's the best way to actually grab attention. I hope that answers your question. Will you be able to email us the presentation later on? Yes, everybody who has attended will be able to get this video recorded presentation, and you can have access to it to share with your team or to look at it yourself. And I hope it was helpful. Thank you for joining me today. If you guys ever have any other questions about product development, private label, you're welcome to reach out to me. Thank you for attending. Thank you for your presence. And I just wish you guys all the best of luck in your sales and your product development, and look forward to talking to you guys sometime soon. I hope you have a great rest of your Friday. Enjoy that Memorial weekend.